afternoon. In 2009, two young Australian girls found themselves lost in a tunnel, and they couldn't get out. But good news, they have their cell phones on them. So they did what I'm sure any teenager would do. They get out their cell phone, they go to Facebook, they update their status, say, hey, help us, we're lost in this tunnel. And then, satisfied with their call for help, they sat back and waited for rescue. But wait a minute. Now, if you're anything like me, the first time you hear that story, you think to yourself, now, that was clever. They were crowdsourcing their rescue. But then the obvious begins to occur to you that, well, if they have phones, their phones have connections, see where I'm going with this, then there were like 3 or 4 other websites they could have tried. So let's think this through. They posted something on Facebook. I don't know what their post actually said. I'm guessing a young person writes something like this. Now, embarrassment prevents me from reading that. Now, out of my own morbid curiosity, I've often wondered, did anybody like this post? Two girls stuck in a tunnel, thumbs up. But you know, if it were me, and I'm lost in this tunnel, I'm thinking I'll go to Twitter. I can reach more people faster, and I can embed a picture in it. And that picture has, a picture of the tunnel, and it's been geo-encoded with my location. But wait a minute. Since location's the important part here, I could go to something like Google Maps, and then I could send my call for help, say, I'm lost in this tunnel, and here's how to get here. Because, of course, none of us have ever gotten lost following the directions we got from the internet. For all I know, it was directions from the internet that got me into this tunnel. And now that we're stuck here, we can check in on Foursquare. I just became mayor of the drainage tunnel. You see, for these two girls, we might describe them with a potentially overused term of digital native, right? Unlike many of us who are digital immigrants or quite possibly even a digital refugee or two, these girls were born after the internet, not knowing a world without cell phones. But we have to ask ourselves that when they came to this problem, they were faced with a life or death situation, and their first thought, and pretty much only thought, was to reach out to their network of friends using their mobile device. What we have to ask ourselves is, why can't learning work the same way? Better yet, why can't the classroom work the same way? You see, the idea of the classroom has gone virtually unchanged for generations. The introduction of technology to the classroom, especially those being brought in by students, begins to create some friction. It creates new problems that we've not had in the past. One of those is this, the cone of distraction. The cone of distraction basically says that if you have a student sitting in the front of the classroom with their laptop open, that it will create a cone-shaped area of distracted students behind them. Now, you can actually calculate this cone where radius 1 is your screen diagonal of the laptop and radius 2 is the probability of PowerPoint, which speaks to the more boring your slides are, the wider that cone will get. But see, this has led some to hang signs like this one in an attempt to try and control how the technology is being used. But the problem is the second this is hung on the wall, it's completely out of touch. This particular sign mentions pagers. Really? Pagers? Is this a problem that we have? If you see somebody in a classroom with a pager, they're one of 3 things. They're either a med student, a drug dealer from the mid-90s, or somebody waiting for a table at Outback. Pagers are the fanny pack of mobile devices, which is exactly how we will feel about today's devices tomorrow. But what we don't know is as these students bring these devices into the classroom, how are they being used? Every classroom has that student sitting in the back row, not quite making eye contact. As one internet meme suggests, we can be sure they're texting, because why else would you look down at your crotch and smile? But see, this tends to cause a problem. Is this a distraction, or does this actually aid somehow in terms of how the classroom functions? We don't know what you do with the technology in the classroom, but what we do know is that its presence makes it possible to have a back channel of conversation that you couldn't have otherwise had. So here at Purdue, we developed a tool called Hot Seat. And the idea behind Hot Seat was simple. Let's take all of those technologies, all of those tools that are already coming into the classroom and give them a use. It's a principle we call run what you brung. Whatever that tool is, whether it be a phone or an iPad or a tablet or laptop, use that as a way to engage in discussion. Now, how Hot Seat works is fairly simple. The instructor poses a question or comment to which students can respond. A traditional example of this would be as part of asking a question inside a class. The questions as they come in get aggregated with questions being asked by other students. Students can then in turn vote on the questions, escalating them up a list, and then all of this gets aggregated and shared, and so students can access all the questions being asked by everyone else from whatever their desired device or access point is. So whether this be from your smartphone, from your tablet, from your laptop, or even via a Facebook app. Right, so we have a number of different options to get access to this data. But part of the problem is that when we begin to think about this, it's like, well, we had these technologies before, we weren't really sure about them then. Won't we have some real challenges with this? Because there are some challenges that really kind of come to mind right off. The first one is really dealing with credibility, right? There's a great episode of NBC's The Office where the character Michael Scott, he's talking about Wikipedia, he says, anybody can write anything they want to, so you know it's the best information possible. Right? But what we found was that as we brought down those barriers and enabled the students to collaborate with one another, it actually became a source for pursuing accuracy, whether that be a part of asking a question or in the rare event that there was let's say a misinterpreted fact in the lecture, that they could call that out and actually seek to provide an alternative answer. So the back channel didn't become a source of misinformation, but actually became a source of accuracy. The second one, which is the one that most people leap to, is the idea of what I call the comment grenade. The comment grenade is it's a comment that's made, and it is thrown from kind of like this area of security, right, with the intent of doing some kind of harm where it lands. Let's walk through an example of what this looks like. This is an actual conversation that happened. This is an excerpt for several items in one discussion on investment bonds. First question comes in, what would be considered a good interest rate for bonds? It's an okay question. It begins to build on the material. Are bonds the pieces of paper sold in the movies? 10 sheets equals $3 million, and Jodie Foster's hiding in a panic room, right? So what the student's doing here is they're beginning to build on some past experience that they had. Is this bond thing, is this like what I'm seeing in the movies? Are bail bonds a form of investment? Or are they only there to get a drunken buddy out of jail? Potentially this too is drawing on a past experience. But what we're seeing is, okay, they're beginning to have some fun with this, and then that led us to our last one, which is Craig is the most badass Bond, which, of course, refers to Daniel Craig, the most recent James Bond. But then that also deals with that credibility problem we had earlier, because we all know that Connery was the most badass Bond. What we found was interesting. When we opened up this back channel of conversation and enabled the students to collaborate with one another, they used it. 86%. 86% of the students in these classes, and this is a pilot study of about 800 students across a series of courses. 86% probably didn't buy the textbook for that class. So I was thrilled to see these kinds of numbers. But the other thing we learned was very interesting, was that the students thought that it actually enriched the classroom conversation. And in other cases, we found that the students felt like their opinions were being heard. And this is very compelling when you start to think about the students in these classes that otherwise wouldn't have felt like they had a voice, now have one. And the mobile technology makes it possible. So why would we seek to ban that from the classroom? Why would we seek to ban that person who wants to have a voice but may not be comfortable standing out amongst the crowd? So at Purdue, what we've been working on is developing a series of tools along these lines. Let's take advantage of these technologies that students are bringing with them into the classrooms and use them to enable new forms of instruction or use them to engage students in new ways. This is our new opportunity because right now is a period of time of rapid experimentation and development of new ideas around mobile and social technologies. Right? We haven't even seen the best stuff yet. We look at stuff like the iPad, and we can kind of revel in its simplicity and really appreciate its advancement. But what we have to do is ask ourselves, is this the beginning of a revolution, or is it the end of one? You see, the iPad was first foretold in the movies, first appearing in the movie 2001, maybe more accurately depicted in Star Trek The Next Generation. Captain Picard carried a device called a pad. which is fantastic when you consider that in the Star Trek universe, they had not yet found a cure for male baldness, but tablets were a technology that they had cracked. You see, this is our opportunity. We live in science fiction. We live here every day. And science fiction can inspire a new classroom that exists in bricks and clicks at the same time. A new classroom that's not just online, but exists in the social networking connections between students and on the phones in their pockets. This is the new place where learning can happen. And what we need to do are place more smaller bets on a new generation of technology that will help us get there. Thank you for your time.